What's up?
You heard me?
I actually didn't.
LGBTQ.
Yep, what about it? I believe it's a mental health condition.
Okay.
Well,
all trans people have cooties. It's like yuck, yucky, yucky. And there's evidence. There's been studies done. There's been many studies done. Like, there's been a lot of studies. Lots of studies. It's like...
There's been lots of studies. Dude, that guy's hilarious, man. I absolutely love him. So, hey, listen, we're back. We are reacting to Vivek Ramaswamy on LGBTQIA plus. I love this dude. You know, the more I watch this guy, the more I'm just falling in love with the way that he presents the issues. He gets to the root of the issue. But before we jump in, I just want to say Happy New Year to everybody out there. God bless you and yours. Today, we're going to be reacting to, it's like a 9-minute segment. I'm going to let the whole video play. And then after the video, we're just going to talk about these issues. I'm going to give you my perspective from, obviously a Judeo-Christian perspective as a disabled veteran, what my opinions are and what's best for this country going forward. So with no further ado, let's jump right in to that video.
I'm going to sit across the table from Xi Jinping. Give you the hard questions.
LGBTQ.
What's up?
You heard me?
I actually didn't.
LGBTQ.
Yep, what about it?
Yeah, you just said there was nothing about transgender.
Yeah, so how about this? I give you the mic, and we hear what you have to say. And then I'm going to answer you, and you'll hear what I have to say, what everybody else here has to say. Does that sound like a good deal?
I don't need the mic. Yes. I can speak louder.
Well, stand up, tell me your name, and state your question.
My name's Alexis Case, and I grew up here.
Okay.
In this town. LGBTQ is a serious situation in this world today. There are children that get bullied because they are gay, they're lesbian, they're transgender. I don't need that.
Okay. You're welcome to have it if you want.
I don't need it.
You get to ask your question, but after that, you're going to hear me give my answer. So I'll let you finish.
What is your stance on LGBTQ?
Good. Thank you for your question. I'm going to answer it. I'm going to go into a level of depth that I don't usually go into on a campaign trail, but I'm going to do it because you asked the question. You deserve an answer. LGBTQIA, there's so many letters, they've just added a plus at the end. That's where we are now. What's going on? So the same movement, because if we're going to call that one thing, let's play it fair. The same movement that said that the sex of the person you're attracted to is hardwired on the day you're born. That was the premise of the gay rights movement, for it to count as a civil right. That movement is now saying that your own biological sex is totally fluid over the course of your life.
Hypocrite.
You can't believe both those things. Well, I think I'm going to get to a deeper say. That's where I was about a year or two ago, but I think there's something deeper going on, and I'll tell you what it is. So the same movement, and by the way, let's think about the women's rights movement in this country, which said there's many ways to be a woman. You can have long hair, short hair, you can wear a skirt, you can wear jeans. Now says that, oh, if actually you want to behave a certain way, that means you're a man. So I think that the hypocrisies go all the way down. And I'll tell you what's going on. You can't believe both of those things at the same time if you're operating according to principles of sheer logic. But you can if you're adopting a faith, a cult-like belief system. So this is controversial for me to say, but I'm going to tell you what I think. I believe that transgenderism specifically is a mental health disorder. I believe it's a mental health condition.
Okay.
Nobody cares what they think.
Well, no. We're going to finish this. This is good. We have to have open conversation in this country. But I don't think the compassionate thing to do.
Mental health disorder.
Well,
it's how they fucking feel.
Well, let me. If I'm going to give you a chance to respond if you'd like, but
No,
we can't have an open debate in this country if we're not able to state our views.
That's how they feel.
That's how they feel. And you know what? I'll tell you a story, and you deserve to hear this. I met two young women in this race about 6 months ago. Their names were Chloe and Katie, two young women. They're in their 20s now. Both of them had their breasts cut off. One of them had her uterus removed.
Okay.
They're in their 20s. They regret that decision. One of them wants to have kids. She'll never have kids. The other one will never breastfeed her children. They'll never be the same because they had that done to them when they were teenagers. So no, when a young person shows up and says, my gender doesn't match my biological sex, they're asking for help.
But you just said 20. That's not
They happened to them when one girl was 13 when it happened to her. She's in her 20s now and regrets it. This is what's wrong in this country. We will look back at this and say this was barbaric that we allowed this to happen in this country. That is not compassion. That is cruelty. And so I don't think the right thing to do is, I'm not going to villainize those people. You don't villainize people who are going through suffering, but you have to be willing to say when a kid shows up and says, my gender doesn't match my biological sex, you have to be able to say, what else is going wrong at home? What else might be going wrong at school? Get to the bottom of what's going on. Help that person with compassion, with dignity. So my view is this: if you're an adult, you're free to live your life however you want as long as you're not hurting somebody else. If you're a man, you can dress how you want. If you're a woman, you can dress how you want. Identify how you want. We're a free country and I'm not going to stop you. But kids are not the same as adults. And we have to protect our children. And I'm going to go further than that. We can't change the way that women and men compete in sports. We can't do that. We can allow you to live your life the way you want to. But we can't change the way that we operate in our own life. And I'm going to finish this thought and then you get to respond. Because I think this is good. We don't do this enough. Open debate. I love this. I think what we've had in our country before is a tyranny of the majority. And that's what we worry about. But right now we don't have a tyranny of the majority. What we have in this country right now is a tyranny of the minority. That's what we have right now, a tyranny of the fringe minority that tells you to shut up, sit down, and do as you're told. No, we have to stand for what is true. And so I promise you, you will have a chance to respond. I'm going to keep my promise. You tell me. This is good. We don't do this enough in our country anymore. Open conversation. Tell me.
I was a child when I knew that I was gay. Not the fact that I wanted to change my gender, but living here in this town, I knew that I wanted, that I was a lesbian, that I was attracted to females.
And you know what's
But I had to hide it.
And when did you grow? When was that? In the 90s?
Oh, no. Let's see, I came out when I was 19, so I was born in 1983.
So I think where we are now, we're in a similar generation. I think things today aren't what they were. I grew up in Ohio in the 1990s, and we're in a different place today. And I think this could be a very productive conversation. I don't get to do this in the campaign trail often, where we all are in our own echo chambers and silos. So it's good for us to talk to each other. I like that. Something funny's happened, I think, in the last few years in this country with the civil rights movement. It's right when we get to closest to the promised land of true racial equality that we then start obsessing over systemic racism. It's right when we get to the point in our national history where whoever you are, you can marry who you want, where you want, if you want, whatever gender they are, that we start then obsessing over the sexual identity revolution. You know what's actually funny right now is many people who are lesbian or gay are being taught to say that, hey, if you're a woman attracted to a woman, you're not a woman, you're a man. So that's the transgender movement. The L and the G, first of all, don't have that much to do with each other. The G and the T don't have as much to do with each other. But we're clubbing all of these things up to create more division. I hate the term persons of color. You want to know why? You take 100 different cultures, combine them into one thing that's designed to be opposed to this other thing we call white. And so the way I view this is, you are free to live your life the way you wish to, as long as you don't hurt anybody else in return. And I'm free to do the same thing too. But that doesn't mean we change the way men and women compete in sports. That doesn't mean we change the way. men and I don't think that just because you identify as a man doesn't mean that you're entitled to a trophy. You agree? Do you agree with me on that?
That's different.
You agree with me on that?
I get you. I get you.
You agree with me on that? All
I
right.
get you. That's different.
Because
That's
men
different.
shouldn't be swimming with women in women's sports competitions. Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's different.
That's what I'm talking about, right?
100%, that's
And so that's what I'm saying is it's not all the same thing, right? And so we got to respect people and treat them with dignity. Every one of us is different. But all I'll say is kids aren't the same as adults, and if we can agree on that, then I think we at least made some progress tonight and we'll have a step forward. So thank you, I appreciate that. So, and I respect her for asking that. That takes courage to stand up and be the only, you know what, I'll tell you this. When you're the only person in a room, and I'll come to you next, when you're the only person in a room who believes what you do, I will always tell you, stand up and say it. That's how we're going to get this country back, is actually all of us starting to speak openly again. And that's how we're going to get this country back. And I love your shirt. She's got an American flag. So you get the next question.
So how about it, man? I mean, let me make a couple points going back to the beginning. If you noticed her, first of all, in the comment section below, write down what your thoughts are about the issues, the way that she presented those issues, the way that he reacted to those issues, and how that builds to your preference when it comes to a presidential candidate, how they conduct themselves. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if this channel is interesting to you, and comment below. So now let's jump into the review of that video. The first thing that I want to point out, if you look at the beginning, she was all sorts of triggered whenever she brought up the issue and he said that it was a mental health condition. She like stood up and flipped in the bird, was like, all right, I'm out of here. But he beckoned her and he said, wait, stick around and let's actually have a debate. Let's have let's get some clarity in this issue and what this is all about. I like the fact that he took his time to try to actually have a discussion about these issues. It's in a stark contrast to what you would see from other candidates who would either pander to that person or just shut them down, right? Like a Trump would probably just shut them down. I'm thinking of like a Shane Gillis impression of the gays. But I love Shane Gillis. He's great. But the whole point is, I really like the way that he handled himself and conducted himself honorably, but yet stood his ground. So that's point number one. Number two, he held his stance that this is a mental health condition. And I want to share with you my screen because it is, in fact, a mental health condition. When we're talking about gender dysphoria, I've talked about this before on a prior video of the military industrial complex and the issues now with trans being allowed in the military and all that stuff. Here's the facts. According to the DSM-5, right? He has a ground. This is fact check. Okay. We're fact checking him in this debate. He's right. Because here's what we know about gender dysphoria: a marked incongruence between one's experienced expressed gender and nature gender of at least 6 months in duration, as manifested by two of the following. And I'm not going to read all of them, but I'll just state a couple of them for this point. Let's go to C. A strong desire for primary and secondary sex characteristics of the other gender. A strong desire to be rid of one's primary and or secondary sex characteristics. A strong desire to be treated as the other gender. So that is in fact is criteria to meet the diagnosis. So if there's a trans person and they're confused about what gender they are or what they want to be as a difference from their primary sex characteristics, that in fact does meet the criteria for gender dysphoria. And so when he goes into it and states that this vocal minority, and this was my second point that I want to make about reviewing his video, is he does a really good job of articulating that it is in fact a delusion. It's a mental health disorder. And the people who are getting behind it are simply trying to pander. So if you think about politics and the left and the Democrats, they're jumping on board to this because they want to be seen as noble. They want to be seen as somebody who is, um, standing up for gay rights and LGBTQ. And you could go through that, and you could even say issues of the minority, black folks, or whatever. But all they're doing is they're pandering to those issues so that they can get your votes. And I think we have to be very wary of that when it comes to these issues that politicians are talking about. Is it's pretty simple. You have to, if all somebody does is agree with you, first of all, that's a beta male trait. Second of all, they're only pandering to you. And I want to share with you scripture that elucidates that fact. In Exodus chapter 23, it says, verse 2, do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. Do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. So I've said it before, I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of Vivek at the beginning, but he keeps growing on me. And the more I watch these videos, the more I see his character, and the more I am attracted to the masculinity where the true masculinity, where he's taking a stand for something based off of facts, not just pandering to other people. He's standing his ground about what the actual issues are. And he gets to the point when I talk about the third point here, the framework that he's bringing people into, he maintains his frame. He's bringing people into the frame that these same-sex attractions and these, like, at one point the movement was saying, oh, well, once gay, always gay. I was born this way, right? Think about the Lady Gaga song, I was born this way. Well, now that movement has shifted. Now, because of the trans movement, it's like, oh no, now sex is fluid over one's lifetime, and you can change those at any point in time. And somebody in the crowd said, well, that's hypocrisy. Well, it is. It really is, because here's what we also know in the scripture. I'm going to point you to the scripture again. I always use the scripture to back up what I'm saying here. If you go down into, it's even in Exodus, again here, all the way down at the bottom, it says, I will make your enemies turn backs and run. And also that he is going to turn enemies against each other in their own camp. And that's what happens when we see this, because I've already said this before on other podcasts, but it's a spiritual issue first. And the enemy wants to seek, kill, and destroy, and he wants to turn people against each other. He loves nothing more than to turn the image of God on itself. And instead of a man being a man, he wants men to think they're women, and he wants women to think they're men, and he wants men to lay with men, and he wants women to lay with women. He wants people to think that and just confuse the natural relations. And so we see this in the New Testament. I want to share this with you. In the New Testament, you see this in Romans. In Romans chapter 1, verse 26, for this reason, God gave them over to do dishonorable passions. Even their women exchanged natural relations for one another. Likewise, men abandoned natural relations with women and burned for lust with another. Men committed indecent acts with other men and received themselves the due penalty for their error. Furthermore, since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, he gave them over to a depraved mind to do what ought not to be done. And so, although this is a complex issue when it comes to each person should be treated with love, dignity, and respect, but not the ideology, and certainly not the sin nature. Because you can love me, but you can hate the sin that's in me, right? There's a big difference. And if I was to do something, like if I was to go out and steal from a store, from a hardworking black couple who had spent their whole life savings on a small gas station or something like that, and I went in there and I stole from them, and it caused them to go into debt because of my theft, wouldn't I then be guilty of a sin, and people would be angry at me for committing that sin? So it's a simple fact that when people are Their hearts are so turned against God. They not only do things that are wrong, but they approve of those who do them. And then God gives them over to a depraved mind. And that can happen early in childhood. I myself had unwanted sexual experiences as a kid. And so I got turned into, it turned into hypersexualism and pornography at an early age, and all sorts of other improper things, being with older women at such a young age. Like, so for me, I know firsthand that like sexual immorality is a real problem. But I like the way that Vivek approaches this topic when he says that essentially we need to stop these gross ideologies from being pervasive in our education system, from our government, from our politics. It needs to be removed especially from our children's eyes and ears in schools. Like we should not be teaching that that gender is fluid to our kids. So, I mean, these are complex issues, but I really like the fact that he dives into it. And within 9 minutes, I think he does a pretty good job of confronting these issues. But that's enough of my review. You tell me what you guys think in the comment section. Hit the comments and let's have a discussion about these issues. Tell me what your thoughts are about Vivek in the upcoming January 15th. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions. I've heard that the polls aren't doing so well for Vivek, but at the same time, I'm interested to hear what your perspectives are. And so I will see you in the next video.
Other people. Carl Jung once said, "Shut up, bitch, get in the car." It's like, shut up. It's like, stop bothering me and get in the car.